I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. Do you have a parent or loved one nearing the most fragile years of life? Most of us know that eventually our parents will be entering this stage later in life, and we are most often not prepared for the challenges that it brings. Aging expert Amy ORourke is author of The Fragile Years and founder of ORourke and Associates. She is a dedicated care manager with a passion for helping people and their loved ones find peace and joy as they age. She has over 40 years of experience. The book, The Fragile Years, is written for millions of unpaid caregivers and adult children of aging parents entering those final years of life. Today we talk about what are those fragile years, what are some of the common mistakes we make as caregivers, what makes a good quarterback, what does overtreatment rob us of, what are the most common topics that cause tension in families, and how we can work through complicated relationships, what key areas we can focus on when we are making preparations for the future, the benefit of knowing what questions to ask if you are looking at a potential move into an assisted living or nursing home, and the different options for care and payment. Amy's work has also been celebrated by NPR, TEDx, US News and World Report, Care.com, and Forbes. While these years can be challenging, they also provide, as Amy would say, a beautiful opportunity for connection, meaning, and joy. Here is my interview with Amy ORourke. Hi, Amy. I've been counting down the days. I read your book and I have the digital copy, which I'm going to go buy the hardcover copy because I want it as almost like my guidebook where I wanted to write in it and have it next to me at all times. It really spoke to me. There was so much good knowledge, information, resources. I think it is so timely. So welcome. Thank you for being here with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It might be hard for me to keep our podcast short today, only because there's so much that I want to talk about with you. I feel like, gosh, it's a message that people really need to hear and a conversation that we do not often have. As a seasoned professional, I was nodding my head the entire time reading the book. And I also got emotional because it brought me back to scenarios in my life that I could relate to. So first and foremost, can you share with us a little bit about your background and then what prompted you to write the book, The Fragile Years?
Well, I can, and I'm glad to be here. And anybody that's listening, I think the part about me that I would want people to know is I started working with older adults when I was a teenager, volunteering in a nursing home with a group of girls from the Girls Club. And I fell in love with the work. I thought the residents in the nursing home were grateful and humble and outspoken and honest, and the intimacy of those relationships drew me in. And I thought, I don't want to work with any other population because it was just so real. And I worked in activities. I'm a therapeutic recreation professional, and I then became an administrator, and I opened up my own care management business in '99, and because I wanted to directly impact families. And in a community, it's hard to do because you have to manage regulations. And so that became less of an interest to me than working with families and their parents. So I started a business in '99, and that's all we did is we helped adult children with their parents when they got into trouble, and they all get into trouble. You hit your 80s and things start happening. And what happened is we literally have helped thousands and thousands of families. And I had some colleagues that I trusted implicitly, and they were telling me, you need to get all this in a book because we need to know in one spot. I don't consider myself a writer, but I really have over the years been mentored by so many different people that when someone advises me, I take it to heart. Like, and I wrestled with it, thought about it, and I made a decision and thought, you know what, I really want to help adult children with their families. Hopefully, the book will get the attention of a politician, and the big part of me says, visionary part of me, maybe we could change a law or 10.
Right.
Let's change the system. But in the meantime, I just did a 3-hour boot camp at a church in Georgia 2 weeks ago. And there were 70 children, and I say children, adult children, all grappling with how to handle their parents were in the hospital, in the nursing home, getting neuropathy and all these issues. And the book really, it was a starting point for them. So it's probably a longer answer than you were looking for, but it's like my whole life's work has been trying to positively impact an older person's life. And usually that means helping the children get into reality around how their parents really are doing.
Yeah, it does. And I felt that way too with the book, where it is almost that reference guidebook that you can constantly go back and reference. It's something that I'll look at and I'll revisit. And I've been in the industry for over 20 years. And it's something where I still want that framework and reminders, because it's true in conversations that I have with families all the time. They have all of those questions that you're addressing and talking about. And you really realize that there's this common theme of the need to feel supported, the need to have some direction by professionals that have been there and you've been intimately involved with older adults and families for so many years and can offer that expertise in helping come alongside people for that time in their life.
Yeah, it's true. And what I noticed is, and this, an older person who's fragile, that the children have a period of denial that they're in, that they can't quite see it. So that first time when you say this is normal, like this is normal.
Yeah.
You can just see they'll start crying. They start, you just tell them, take a deep breath. This is, I'm going to teach you. It's like when you're pregnant, you get the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, and you go, oh my God, okay, then these hormones are natural, and my crying is natural, and baby brain is a real thing, and all those things,
Right.
that it does the same thing. And I realized that I knew that the fragile years was a real thing. It's a stage. But I realized that every child that I met that had a parent didn't know that.
So true. We share some similar commonalities with our work with recreation and TR, but also with that shared experience of being in care center. And I was in college and I was taking some nursing classes at the time. And part of that curriculum required you to be a nursing assistant in a nursing home. So while I had my grandma live in our home when I was growing up, it was the first time that I was in that nursing home environment. And working with those older adults, I fell in love with that population. You got such a glimpse into the realities of what life looks like at that time. And that's when it shifted for me, is that, oh my word, there's actually a whole field of study out there like this called gerontology. I mean, it was kind of eye-opening because I never even knew it existed at all. So it changed my degree on that. But it's something where those different life paths and what you do then lead you to something next. And for you, this is all, culminated with not only your wonderful career that you've had, but also leaving the legacy of the book. And who would you say is your audience for the book, and who do you hope grabs it and picks it up and reads it?
Well, first and foremost, the child that is grappling with a parent that's in a crisis. And when you're in that mode, you think, no one can help me. You don't even know there's somebody you can call. You're drowning. Nobody in your world really understands what you're going through. So that person, if you're listening, there's help out there. It's called care management. aginglifecare.org is a website. You can go on this website and find a person that can be your guide and your coach to help you along the way. Yes, buy the book. It's got inside intelligence. It will help you absolutely. But there's also a profession that can help you. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I'd like to reach the nervous 50-year-olds that their parents aren't there yet. And there's a niggling thought of, what would I? So those start, buy the book, and then ask your parents questions, open-ended, to establish that you're going to be curious about how they envision their older years. What's their vision for themselves? And then what's their vision for you? So adult children in a crisis and then not in a crisis. And then lastly, and I will tell you, I had a meeting with a couple, and they're in their 80s. And I wouldn't say they're fragile, but they each bought the book and they were reading it at night to each other. And that warmed my heart beyond, and I never really realized, and they bought the book for their son. They have an only child. He lives far away, but they wanted to educate themselves. And then they got the book for him. And I don't think I expected that would happen, but I considered that a bonus. It was just lovely to picture them. And I've had more people in their late 70s buying the book for themselves and then realizing, I got to get this for my kids. So knowing that I'm impacting those conversations starting, and so you're not having to wait into a crisis, makes me really, really happy.
It does. What I really pulled out of it was, how do we honor this time of life with the highest quality? And so older adults can say, here's my wishes. Here's what I want that to look like. And hoping those adult children can get on board with that too, because as we'll get into, it can be complicated.
Right. Right.
And I think it's important when we're in that crisis or whatever is happening, and when there's no roadmap for what's next, we don't always know where to go and how to move forward. What are those common mistakes or challenges that we might make as a caregiver for our loved ones, or when we're in that place?
The hallmark to me in taking care of a parent or a loved one is a lot of anxiety. Everybody's got anxiety, and people do things to avoid that discomfort and that anxiety. So having some self-awareness or knowledge that you're really nervous, really scared, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and to get the support that works to get some anxiety lowered. That would be first and foremost. Kind of check yourself out, because what happens is people will try to get a solution too big and too fast for their parent because they have anxiety. And I'll give you an example. We'll get a call and I got to move my mom to assisted living. I got to move my mom because she's falling. Okay. Or I got to move my mom because she's confused. And so it's a big solution. It's bigger than the parent can tolerate, might not even be what the parent wants, usually isn't what the parent wants, but there's an idea or a feeling that the child wants relief from the anxiety, and they'll put a solution too big, too hard, too fast, thinking that that's going to make themselves feel better, and it doesn't work. What I try to educate people to do is get help with your stress, and then whatever solutions you want to employ, start smaller than you think you should. And like, maybe it's picking up the mail for them. Maybe it's just having one delivered meal. Maybe it's copying their Medicare card so that you have a copy of it. Like tiny, tiny little things that say, we're entering a new phase in our relationship here. And so that they can experientially realize that they're going to be getting help from you, but in a very small, tolerable way. And then the other thing I think about is really, really learning to listen. And in that listening, develop a tolerance for uncertainty. Because everything in taking care of someone that's ill is uncertain. Are they going to recover from this diagnosis? Are they going to get back to where they were? Probably not. Are they going to be able to afford the care they need? Is that neighbor going to keep bugging them? Is that like, there's a lot of things that don't get solved in a perfect bundle. It usually doesn't. To me, there's a huge spiritual opportunity because don't we all, life's probably more uncertain than we like to accept on any given day.
Yeah.
Like it's fraught with uncertainty, although we lie to ourselves and tell us that things are more certain than they really are.
So true. Yeah.
With a parent, you really can't, there's a lot of uncertainty that you just can't change, and you got to get used to it because you're in for the long haul. It's 3 to 5 years when someone's in the fragile years, 3 to 5 years. And it's a lifestyle change. So you have a child and for the next 20 years, you're going to be living a certain kind of life. With a parent, when they hit the fragile years, you got 3 to 5 years that you're going to be having a different lifestyle, whether that's flying across the country, whether that's every Monday you take your parent to the doctor, whether it's a lifestyle change. And so knowing that and then making those, I remember when my dad was down here, I resigned from 2 boards I was on, and I didn't do it for any other I didn't do it. I just knew that my mental energy was going to be focused on him, that I didn't have it to give.
It's almost like we are exercising that muscle of resiliency of change, or managing, just knowing that we're gonna be feeling like not everything's like wrapped up in this tight little package in a bow.
Yeah, I love the word resilience, and it really does build resilience. And the other thing I've noticed is you're teaching your children a lot because they're watching you. We all watch our parents. I watch my dad, I watch my mom. I don't have children, but my nieces and nephews watch me, and they watch their parents. And so you're also providing a teaching opportunity for your children in how you're helping support your parents.
I love that lesson of teaching our children, and they're watching us. They're always watching us. I spent a lot of years watching my mom care for my grandma and my great aunt, and seeing that love played out in a lot of different ways that I think it taught me much more than I even realized at the time.
I just got chill bumps because what you're saying is so true. You don't really realize until you start doing something and you think, oh, this is what my mom did. Oh, this is what it's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. So we're using the term, and the name of your book is The Fragile Years, but for people that might not know what that is, how would you describe those fragile years?
I'll throw out some stages so that you can get an idea of where I was coming from when I titled the book. The terrible twos, the trying teenage years, midlife crisis, menopause, the fragile years. And it's recognized by a slowing down. So slower walking, slower talking, slower processing, reminiscing. All old memories are coming back. A reduction in normal activities that you never thought your parent would stop doing. They're not puttering around in the backyard every day. That's only a couple days a week. You can't get them to church on Sunday, or you can't get them every week. And maybe the golf is being reduced. So it's a reduction in activities and a slowing down, reminiscing. And it can be begun. It can be started by an event, maybe a fender bender, maybe a fall, maybe something, but it could be just a general, once my dad stopped golfing 5 days a week and it went to 3, I was like, oh, here it starts. When he declined going to his granddaughter's graduation, that he'd never missed a graduation. So that's the fragile years. And then how I like people to think about it is then all the care that's presented to that older person, and usually acute care, the swallow study, the cardiac test, the MRI, you might be realizing that, well, maybe maybe we don't get that MRI because if there's a surgery required, we're probably not going to do it anyway. So all the care that's rendered to someone in their fragile years is less than someone in their 60s because more harm is at potential. And most older adults will say, I want to die in my own home.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to the hospital. I can't tell you, Nicole, how many people I've gotten out of the ambulance and gone back into the house. They don't want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, please don't take me to the hospital. Because they're not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can't eat and I can't walk, I mean that the statistics of an older person going into the hospital and losing the ability to walk is about 20%.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And even after surgery, or I worked on a rehab unit, so transitional care unit, and seeing the change from those hospital stays was so evident that you knew that was going to take quite a bit of time, if at all, that they would ever return to what life looked like before. It really is trying.
Yeah.
It's trying.
Yeah. And we see it and you say, no, don't take it to the hospital. They'll never come back the same. You know, I've created in my mind my idea of a wing in a nursing home, and it's an experimental wing, and I'm going to call it the leave me alone ward, the leave me alone floor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not on hospice, but I just don't want you bugging me. I don't want you making me drink stuff to make my appetite. I don't want you making me gain weight.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want you, you know, telling me I have to sleep on a mattress on the floor because I'm at risk for a fall, you know, just kind of let me be.
Yeah. I don't want to eat low sodium. What are some of the other ones?
Oh, yeah. Don't
Yeah.
check my blood sugar
Right.
and give me insulin because I want that croissant, you know? Like,
Yes. I really want to enjoy this piece of cake. Oh, so
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Are there stages within the fragile years, or once you are in those fragile years, is it kind of that identifying time period?
Yeah, the stages, once you're, you know, you've got the slowing down and you've got the reminiscing, then you really are experiencing a loss of independence. You know, there's some, you know, maybe it's that a caregiver's coming over, maybe it's that you have your lawn done and you used to have maybe it's the delivered meals, but maybe your daughter's doing more for you than you realized. So you've lost some independence. And then you go into, I call it a soft place to land, where you need assisted living, whether you move or you create it at home. It's the same thing to me. You creating that place that you're going to land, that's your next, it's your new stage. And it's usually a little bit of help. Maybe it's 4 to 8 hours a day. And from there, you then really start what I'm going to call the dying years. But when I say dying, I don't mean imminent, and I don't mean within a month, but I'm winding everything down so that I can have a peaceful passing. So loss of independence, a soft place to land, and then the end, you know, and you've seen this in your work where I've got a client right now who's sleeping in his chair because the bed's no longer, he feels it's easier for him to get in and out of the chair, and the chair reclines, and he's at the end. You know, and we're making that okay. The chair's great. We didn't buy him another bed. He wants to sleep in the chair. That's fine. We don't have a problem with that. And maybe a family member would, but so that's kind of like the last 3 stages of the fragile years.
Okay. I loved the term that you used in the book. You talk about having a good quarterback. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by quarterback, and you know, I've served as a quarterback. You can have a great son that's a good quarterback, but somebody's got to be running the game.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be in charge, because the older adult, they're fatigued, they're processing slower, they may or may not have impaired judgment, and they're tired. So somebody's got to be saying yes or no to the hospital, yes or no to the tests, yes or no to the move, yes or no, and then having a really good, and they know you, They know you, and that's why I like kids to ask their parents, what's your vision? So
Mhm.
when I'm faced with the task of being your quarterback or your coach, I know what you would want so I can really do right by you.
Yeah.
It's also making those tough calls.
Mhm.
Fallen in the nursing home, and instead of sending you out, you say to the facility, put them back to bed, like my
Mhm.
little Ernie in the book. Oh. When I finally trained the staff, he's like a weeble. You just, get him up, he's just, that's just what he did. He never broke anything. He just put me back to bed. And they got used to it, but it was alarming to them because they were like, but I had to be the quarterback and say, no. He's fine. Put him back to bed. What if his brain's bleeding? Well, he's really ready to go meet God. He'll be the first one to tell you. Like he's ready to go.
It's executing the play that has been designed ahead of time, hopefully ahead of time, or in the moment. A good quarterback, I love football, so I can use this analogy.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to see those obstacles and then get to the goal, right? And come to that to where there's success for everybody involved.
Yeah. And even for those who are listening that think, we don't have a written plan. What do I do without a written plan? How am I going to be the coach if nothing's written down?
Mm-hmm.
Just sit down and think about all the decisions that they made over the course of their life and let that guide you. Did they go to the doctor all the time? Did they go some of the time? Did they like
Mm-hmm.
what were their decisions? So then you can let that be your teaching tool.
I love that. There's this other bigger conversation about treatment and what that looks like in our fragile years. And the term you had talked about too is that professional courage, looking at the medical system. And while there's great benefit, there are also things that we have that personal autonomy over, and those choices over our bodies. And what does that over treatment rob us of if we do not have the ability to make those decisions?
I love the question. It's very insightful. And I think what I would first say is that our healthcare system in the United States is a capitalized system. And I think everybody needs to like say that out loud and
Mm-hmm.
realize that the more is done for you, the more money the providers make. The less they do, the less they make. It's
Yep.
a business model.
Yep.
I'm a cardiologist. I put a stent in, I get paid. If I don't put a stent in, I don't get paid. So that's the system that you're in. And that's why I started talking about professional courage, because you have all these specialists that are saying you're turning down chemo, you're turning down heart surgery, you're not going to get that valve replaced, you're not going to get a pacemaker put in, oh my gosh, and you feel horrible as a
Mm-hmm.
as a relative making these hard decisions. What happens when you're fragile and you enter the acute care system that is designed to fix, cure, treat, and make money, you actually can do harm. Now, over treatment in healthcare is a real thing. If you Googled over treatment, you'll see a lot. And there's some great books. Shannon Brownlee wrote a book, Overtreated. There's some really good writing about that. But with older adults, the problem comes because they lose the ability to go to the bathroom. They can't walk. They can't eat. Like real values get taken away because you meet an older person, you say, oh, you're not going to be able to watch Judge Judy every afternoon. What? I can't watch Judge Judy. What? I can't watch Jeopardy. What? If you take those things away that they valued, I can't get in and out of the chair independently. I can't go to the bathroom on my own. I have to wear a diaper. These are real issues that if they were presented to them, if you have this surgery, you might not be able to go to the bathroom on your own. Do you still want it? Well, and that's the kind of conversation that I would want the families to have together with the parent if they're able to process it,
Mm-hmm.
to then make a decision to have a procedure knowing that they might lose something that they value, like eating or walking.
Yeah, have the conversation about if this is the choice, which we have the ability to make, here are the potential outcomes for that. And if that is something that you agree to, then we can look at that. But I think having the conversation and not unknowingly go into something without knowing what that could be.
Right. Right. And it's hard to do, if you're an adult child that's listening to this, it's a hard thing to do when they're in the hospital and everyone's in a hurry. The hospital's like, you got to make up your mind. You're going to have this test. You're going to have this. And they're in a hurry. So you feel like because they're in a hurry, you got to be in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would want, if you're listening, I would want you to realize you can slow things down and probably should.
Yeah. I think you actually say, when in doubt, buy time.
Yes.
And I thought that was such good advice because we feel pressured to make decisions really quickly that we might not be comfortable with or like have all the facts. And just to know that it's okay to slow down, take the time. I thought that was such good advice. Good
Yeah,
reminder.
I probably in reflection, any of my really bad decisions were decisions that I made too quickly. And the pressure that everybody in healthcare is under, understandably, and my heart goes out to them. And I have a lot of compassion for those social workers in hospitals and nursing homes that are really pressured. So I understand it. And I think you can buy time and still be nice about it.
I do too. There was something that you had talked about also that really stood out. It was two things. You already mentioned one about more intervention is more revenue, right? Just the business of it. It's not saying that that's wrong. It's just the facts. But also that it's a lot of what's happening is taking each symptom of aging and treating it like a separate disease. And so you've got how many different specialists or appointments based on just that our bodies are aging. And the conversation around that I thought was, I think we need to talk about it. It's really important to talk about that and looking at that quality of life. And it goes back to that. And my next question for you is, how does that transactional approach of healthcare impact us?
So, when you're in the forest, you can't see for the trees. You have an older adult who's got, multiple diagnoses and they're 87 and living or helping them with, maybe they have Parkinson's and you just focus only on the Parkinson's, but you don't focus on, so somebody's got to be looking at that overview. And as all the diagnoses together, how are they doing it? Looking at it holistically, I guess is the word, is you're looking at it holistically and then helping them decide what medicine they will continue or not continue, what therapy they will get or not get, based on having stepped back to say, what are the values that we're trying to preserve here? And, I like to teach by example. If the value is I want to stay at home for as long as possible and the money's there to do it for a while, then if we're just going to drill down into a specialty like a cardiac issue, when they really need their time and energy devoted to having a caregiver there to walk with them to the kitchen and to the dining room, and the cardiac issues, we don't need to worry about the intervention cardiac, because really we're just focusing on what do we need to do to keep their strength and their energy supported so that they can stay at home. And when you're medically complex and you have 5, 6, 7 specialists, you could live your life going in and out of the doctors. And it's always funny to me when I say to the older person, is this how you want to spend your time? And I don't know, maybe it is, but is this, you've got 5 doctors here. Is this how you want to spend your time? Now, COVID has got us Zoom, FaceTime, which is great. But the truth of the matter is, I can just see the relief when you go, oh, I had heart surgery 10 years ago. I guess I don't need to see the cardiologist every 3 months. Okay. So maybe that's something we could comfortably say, not now. So it's taking the holistic approach, even though they might have multiple specialists, and then encouraging and working with the primary care doctor to say, how much of this are you willing and able to run with my dad?
Just asking those questions, and we learn so much. I would witness so many scenarios with family members and older adults and then care teams, and when they're not in an alignment, and so sometimes you've got complicated relationships. One sibling has one idea of how things should happen, or the care team or whatever that is. There's high stress decisions that have to happen. You talk about, there's a lot of words and terminology that families might not be as familiar with. How do we get to the point of supporting families to be able to work through those difficult, complicated situations?
Well, acknowledging that sometimes there's, challenging relationships and going into it, if you can, and it's not always possible, but if you can, get your own support for the status of any of your relationships, just kind of acknowledging and get some inner resolution to, all right, the relationship with my sister is as good as it's going to get. And my goal here is not that we're going to be, best friends at the end of this. Our goal is really, and what is my own personal goal? And is it to help mom? And so and whatever that means, I'm a big advocate for getting counseling when you need it. I run into a patch, I run in, get some therapy and help sound it out. And that's very helpful to me. You might have your own process, but use that process to get resolved the status of the relationships that you're going to be working with for your parent. Because if you go in with those unresolved, or that you've not accepted that this really is the way it is, then you have those high emotions that are from all that childhood baggage that hasn't been processed. It just makes it harder because, my brother always says what he says in the middle of law, and you just
so true.
It's so true. So that, if you can get that process so that your reaction isn't as acute, there's always going to be some, childhood inner discomfort when a sibling says something that they've said for years and you're kind of sick of it or whatever. And then if you're the local one, there's the battle of the local one and the long distance one. And the long distance one, and I've been both.
Yeah.
I've been both, so I know how that goes. It's easy to point from afar and say, this is how I think you should be doing it. And then you're the one that's in town doing all the work. And, if you have a victim mentality, oh, here I am, and it's never going to get any better. They're the ones that are hardest to help because they're so used to not getting help. It's like an unused muscle, and it's really hard to get it. So get help before you think you need it. And I love getting a third party in, helping a productive conversation around mom, and getting a care manager or a mediator or a person of the cloth, person of faith that maybe can help process just some of the decisions that need to be made. And then, agree to disagree on some of the things, you're not always going to get your way. And, we want our way and we don't always get it. So it's really a lot more emotional work that if it gets done, it's easier. There's less to wade through. Not that I don't love a family meeting where someone screams and walks out the door and slams the door. I kind of love those ones because it's real,
Getting it out.
Getting it out. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. And then, what you just said about getting it out, there's a lot to be said for venting and finding the place that you can vent to take some of the steam off, because it's exhausting and stressful.
I always like to say that I believe caregiving it's an inside job, because so much of it it has us looking at our own stuff over and over again and working through that. Or some people choose not to, and that's okay too. But we only benefit when we can work through some of that stuff.
It's very true. It is an inside job. It really is. And then some of those really beautiful memories can be created because you can kind of let your parent be who they are. You can kind of let your family be who they are, and have some memories that you can draw on down the road. And that's, to me, really valuable.
I love how you address the role reversal. And I see this all the time where parents don't want to feel like they're our children, and the adult children will almost step into that parent role and make that pretty clear, like the roles have reversed, now here I am and I'm taking over. And that's a tough dynamic because while you're assuming, yes, maybe some more of that responsibility, I believe it comes down to that dignity piece. And you talk about that respect piece of they don't want to feel like they're children. They are adults that have lived really full, incredible lives and have raised children and have done amazing things that need to be still held at that place. And that will also, I think, go a long way in helping some of those dynamics.
I agree. I agree. And I believe that role reversal happens because they don't know the new way of relating.
Mm.
So they just use the old role because they don't know that there's another role that they need to learn.
Mm.
So it's kind of a natural thing. Oh, you just kind of revert to what you know, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But when you learn the collaborative way of working together and doing it more as a partnership, it's more effective because I mean, I get annoyed. I had, a young person call me honey, and I just don't want to be called a honey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't necessarily need to be called Mrs. O'Rourke, but not honey or sweetie.
Yeah.
Please don't do that,
I know. I think we've lost that skill of just saying, "What would you like me to call you?"
Exactly. I know. And I could see she was nervous. So she just out of nerves, that's what she thought she should say, It was like, I didn't say anything to her, but I just had that. And I thought that's what older people feel when you're talking to them as if they were 6 years old. You like, you just become so mad.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, you do. And it goes back to what you had talked about. Our children are always watching us. And that phase of life and learning that new relationship or changing how that new relationship dynamic, what that will look like. That's another piece that you spoke to about we're showing then our family how when we get older, this is how I want to be treated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then patience. If I needed to learn anything in my life, it would be patience and tolerance. And, you have a spiritual opportunity in front of you with a human being that every day, you have that opportunity.
There's ways we can prepare, and there are certain topics that really cause that tension or have families feel even more overwhelmed, but you lay out some of those steps to think about of how we can make preparations for those years. Can you tell us what those are?
This is always an awkward exercise. So the earlier questions can be asked, the better. Just, I don't need to see it, but Dad, can you tell me where where this stuff is? Where do you have your important documents? Is there a safe deposit box? There are legal documents, and every state is different, but having someone assigned to make your healthcare decisions. And sometimes it's called a healthcare surrogate. Sometimes it's called a healthcare proxy. Sometimes it's a medical power of attorney, but somebody needs to be assigned the job of making your healthcare decisions. And then there's another job for a family member, and that's the financial decisions. And this can take the form of a durable power of attorney. It can take the form of being trustee on your parents' trust. It can, and then oftentimes I'm asked, I have 2 children, one's going to be the healthcare decision maker and the other is going to be the financial power of attorney. There's never any right or wrong in any of these decisions. It's knowing the pros and cons of each direction that's important. So for me, when I think of 2 people, one is in charge of the money and one is in charge of healthcare, I would want to know that if the person making healthcare decisions is wanting to buy care, that the financial power of attorney will write the check. And if there's the potential that the person that's financial power of attorney won't want to pay the bills that the healthcare surrogate's generating, then maybe you want it to be one person.
That's a good
Sometimes,
distinction.
yeah. And then sometimes parents don't want to hurt another child's feelings. And so they'll have them be a decision maker, but they're really not. Some people aren't caregivers and some people don't want to make them. Some people aren't good with money. And, so those are hard. And so I want older adults to get help with assigning that without worrying too much about whose feelings they're hurting. But it's a really important thing to do. And I'll throw out an example for your listeners. If you're a married couple and your husband or wife is in the hospital and you go in and you want information, they don't care that you're married. You've got to have a durable power of attorney. So you think, oh, I'm their wife, I'm their husband, I have legal right. Well, you really don't, unless they've signed a document saying so. It's not a little thing that we're talking about. It's good to get done. And because people like to deny that they're growing older, they don't want to get the legal documents in order. And then whoever is succeeding the two of you, you're usually it for each other. And then for the people that are out there that don't have anybody, and this is a real thing. And if you did a podcast on elder orphans, there's people out there that, aren't married, don't have children, don't have nieces and nephews. And, looking locally to say, what will I do? In that instance, that would probably be a really valuable podcast to do down the road.
Absolutely.
And then really, I love the creation of videos or letters saying, these are the things that are important to me. I want easy access outside. I want to be able to bring my dog, or I want to be able to bring my cat, or I don't want to be awakened before 10 a.m. I like my coffee cold. I like to go to bed by 9. All the little personal things that are you, that make you. Either make a video or write it all down. They want to put a pacemaker and I'm severely demented, feel very, very good about saying no. So that when time comes, you just have to watch the video or read the letter and go, oh yeah, she already told me ahead of time. These are the things I needed to know. If I lay in bed all day, that's okay. Don't worry about pulling me up out of bed every day. I'm fine laying down, If I'm an introvert, let me be an introvert.
We have, with our rec backgrounds, it's like they want everybody to leave the room. And now we've moved more towards that personal preference for sure. But those introverts, how many years ago, did not like that.
No, they didn't like. I know, and it always felt bad. I always felt bad, like asking, like they want to be left alone.
I know, that's so true. That's such good advice. There are some questions we also ask, which I thought was really insightful because families want to know all the time, if mom and dad are going to move, what do I look for and what questions do I ask the potential assisted living or nursing home? What to look for. And those questions vary, but I appreciated that there's so much mental load and energy that we have to go through with every decision we have to make, right? And just to have that be alleviated a little bit, okay, here's kind of a guideline and I can go from there. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I'm very financially mindful. So I want to make sure that every family member knows that whatever they're looking at, their parent can afford. That's basic. Don't look at anything that your parent can't afford. And then I'd like to look at the person. We were talking earlier about introvert and extrovert. And, if they're an introvert, take that into consideration. Maybe their smaller home where they couldn't get away from people is not so much. Maybe a studio in a larger building where they can kind of stay away from everybody. If they're medically complex or medically, they have a really big medical diagnosis, Parkinson's, congestive heart failure, diabetes, neuropathy. Many, many, many assisted living facilities sell medical assisted living, but they really provide social assisted living. And this is a question that I would want anybody, like with my dad moving into assisted living, I wanted to make sure there was a nurse on staff every day because he was medically, and how many people did that person manage? The expectations going in. It's not that you wouldn't move them in, but if they're med techs, somebody with 4 to 6 hours of training and they're giving them the pills, but they don't know to look at the swelling in the legs or the color of your skin change or your mouth looks dry or they don't have the nurses training that you will have to step in and be more of an advocate for them if the facility that you're picking doesn't have a nurse on board.
Yeah.
And then the other evaluative tool is, how important is geography to you? Do you envision being able to run in on quick visits? Is 35 minutes too far a drive? Is it an hour out of your life? Like, geography is a really important issue. And if you're working full time and you have children, you got to take that into consideration. What kind of people are they? Like, is the view important? You know, I see some of these facilities and you got the waterfall in the lobby and all these, and most of the people that I work with, old people, they could care less. Like, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, are you evaluating the physical plant based on what you like or based on what your parent would like? And then can they do the things that they enjoy doing? If they want to get out, how's the transportation system? Do they go further than a 10-mile radius? Are there shopping close by? Is there a walking trail nearby? Is there, if you've got a really big extrovert, how are the activities program? I've got one facility in this town, Orlando I live, and 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. The programming in this building is astounding, and it's all memory care. Well, if I've got an extroverted, memory impaired person, when I say go look at this facility, the family's all over it because you could just, that's where they should be.
Yeah. Spot on about, I just went through this with a family member who they were making decisions about where they were going to move dad. And one facility was gorgeous, you know, just built, had all the amenities, all of the things. And the other facility was not brand new. And not as, it still looked beautiful. It wasn't as aesthetically pleasing as maybe this other location. And when they asked my opinion about it, I had interacted with the people at the older facility, and this staff, they are amazing. And I knew the care that they had provided. I had firsthand accounts of how excellent that they were. And my advice is always, you gotta choose people over the aesthetics, if in terms of care. And that's just a perfect example of that, of deciding, you know, where is dad gonna actually really feel cared for and loved? Because I know when I worked, I loved my residents and it felt like home.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And you can walk into a building and see the interaction. You just watch the interaction and, you know, when they know their names and they, you know, pay attention and there's that bond there, that overrides. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Another huge concern is, how do we pay for care? It's one of the biggest concerns, and it's complicated because there's a lot of different methods of how people do that. So you speak to some of those different options. One, and I'll have you kind of just maybe touch on those a little bit so people kind of know what those are. But one that really literally blew my mind, because I had no idea about this, was selling the life insurance policy to pay for care. I was like, what? No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I have a financial brain and I've worked with a lot of people and everybody's worried about money.
Yeah.
The care is outrageously expensive. It's not getting any better. It's getting higher and higher. There's a company called Worthright, and they're in the business of helping you access any of your, you know, equity on your home, life insurance, to see, you know, what you can pull from to help pay for care. And I like to refer to them in addition to looking at people I've had, you know, back in the day, you've seen this with older people, they'll have like 5, 6, 7 life insurance policies. I mean, these people went door to door selling policies and they hung on to them. Is there any cash value? Can you sell it back? I've had families sell their long-term care insurance, get rid of their long-term care insurance because they realized they couldn't afford to keep up the premiums. And so care managers as a profession can help you look at that, to help you look at what is available and then what's your own personal values and comfort level. I'll say reverse mortgage to one person. They're like, no, it's a very expensive loan. And then I have others like, if that's all I have, that's what I'm using.
Yeah.
And so personal values and money are huge. So aginglifecare.org is a place to go to get help with evaluating what you have access to. Worthright.com is another place. If there is any military service, veterans benefits are out there. And then you have Medicaid benefits. And when I say Medicaid, people are like, oh, you have to be poor to get Medicaid. Well, you're going to be poor quickly if you don't look at it now. And now means in your 70s. Look at, what is care costing now? What do I look at now? What do I need to do to position myself to be able to afford the options that I'm going to want to have when the time comes? I had a client call me with 2 weeks ago, $5 million, she and her husband, and she wanted to talk to me about Medicaid. Now, you could have a listening audience going, oh my God, was she crazy? All I heard was fear.
Yeah.
Just fear, anxiety. And I love that she called, and I love the conversation that we had. We looked at everything available, and she ended the call realizing how she was going to pay for everything, but she needed a sounding board. And that to me, get a sounding board. If you have it informally, if you need it formally, I've said how you can get that, Care Management or Worthright, but then, put it to the light of day. And then the other piece in here with finances is know what it costs. Right now, assisted living is between $4,000 and $6,000 a month. And depending on if you're in the Northeast or in California, it's upwards of $9,000 and $10,000 a month. Nursing home is running $10,000 to $20,000 a month. And if you want to know how many years should I be planning for, I would make sure you had enough to pay for 5 years.
Good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so helpful. I mean, I just can't tell you how much I appreciated it. And I am in the business, but I just felt like it was just such a great spot for families to feel encouraged and supported and have information and really practical information, which is what we all desperately need. Where can we learn more about you or find your book? Where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, I've got 2 websites, ORourkeandassociates.com and agingexpert.com. The book can be found on amazon.com. And I would want to thank you for the work that you're doing to get the word out. I feel very blessed to have been part of this conversation with you. And thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode. And now time for an ad break. So I have to tell you about my friend Jimmy Zolo and his new company, Joe and Bella. Jimmy is passionate about older adults. He told me that after both of his grandparents moved into a care community, his family's world has turned upside down and they really became caregivers overnight. As you know, being a caregiver to someone close to you can be overwhelming and there's so much to manage, like making sure your loved one has all of the products they need, keeping things stocked when things run out. And Jimmy's family also had that same problem. They were scrolling through all of these product reviews online, unsure what would be the best to purchase. It can be really time consuming and frustrating, and he wished there was a simpler way to shop for his grandparents. Jimmy decided to launch his own business to solve this problem. He founded Joe and Bella to make shopping for older adults simple. They carry everything from comfy shoes to creative gifts, even toiletries that can automatically be reordered, and technology that makes caregiving easier. And what I love, and I know you guys will too, is that each and every product on Joe and Bella has been carefully selected by caregiving experts. Jimmy is giving an exclusive offer to listeners of this podcast. You can use promo code GATHER to receive 10% off your first purchase at joeandbella.com. That code is GATHER, GATHER, for 10% off at joeandbella.com.